All right, welcome to Guy's Garage. This is a show about everything that guys love. My name is Guy Andrews, and this show today is actually brought to you by RDC Clinical. Now, that's a clinical research company, and they want you to come and sign up to some of their trials. You can do trials for anything from exercise performance, allergies, hair loss, which would be a good one for me to actually sign up to. But jump onto rdcclinical.com.au and register your interest, and you can have a look at some of the trials they're doing. Lots of great perks. You can get body scans and all sorts of things through the trials, depending on which one you sign up to. And you can help people as well as yourself. So get onto it, rdcclinical.com.au. Now, today's guest is a man who's had a 30-year career in the Navy as a clearance diver. He's found his way into movies and the movie business as military consultant, weapons handler in movies like Mad Max Fury Road and Suicide Squad. But I think probably his best claim to fame is that he's been punched in the nose by Charlize Theron. John Iles, welcome.
Thank you very much, Guy. It's very very nice of you to invite me here. Yes, Charlize and punching me in the nose, but it was scripted, so let's just leave it at that.
Well, we might get on to Charlize a little later. What I'm keen to know a bit more about is your early career in the Navy. Can you give us a little bit of background on that career, and then we'll work our way into the movie stuff a little later? Sure.
I actually started at the end of my schooling in Year 12. I was a very physical young lad who wanted to be a fighter pilot in the Air Force, in actual fact. I was doing taekwondo at the time. It was a big part of my life, training and competing. And I became a black belt in my final year of school. So I wanted something that was physical and something that was, enabled me to be out there and doing those things. I went to the Air Force. They turned around and said, "Sorry, John, we'd like to have you, but you're colourblind."
Oh.
So that kind of put a little bit of a spanner in the works.
Did you know this before?
I didn't know that, and I didn't realise, and in hindsight, when I got tested a further 2 years later when I had joined the Navy, they actually turned around and said, no, you've got great colour perception. So the doctor read the chart wrong, little thing called an Ishihara test, little numbered dots. People have done that before.
So the Air Force doctor read the chart wrong?
Well, it really was an ADF recruiting centre, and you go and see a person there, and they talk you into, please come and do this, do that. It's like any business they want.
And so you've missed that opportunity with the Air Force, and you've wound up with the Navy?
Wound up with the Navy, ended up becoming a clearance diver. That happened in 1988. Right. Which is essentially a frogman, as people know.
Yeah, so in Australia they call it frogman or clearance diver. Is it related to the movie hype is always around the Navy SEALs? What's the comparison there?
So in America they have so many people in their defence force, they can be very specialised. SEALs, sea, air and land, so they do the subsurface tactics, the on top of the surface tactics, and on land.
So there you go, I learnt something already. Sea, air and land. See, yes. I just thought it was a seal because they're in the water.
Well, that works as well, and they're called toads as well, and frogs, and all sorts of other names. So they have a very tactical background, and they work all those three different areas, sea, air and land. Whereas a clearance diver, essentially, our core skill is diving. And we will dive scuba air, mixed gas sets, rebreather, oxygen rebreathers, surface supplied, and one of the other primary tasks in the fact that that's our delivery vehicle, the actual diving set. The task is to disarm ordnance subsurface or bring it to the surface and then disarm the ordnance.
So
bombs. So we're bomb disposal technicians as well as being divers.
So a Navy SEAL is more offensive versus you guys are more like a different role.
That's right. They have a more what we call direct action type just task where they go in, they have an assault or they're protecting something, force protection. Whereas our role atypically does involve the gunfighting aspect, and we have specialist sections of the clearance diving branch that actually go off and do selection and become part of TAG East, which is a tactical assault group. Then they become gunfighters. Right. So the Army trains them, and they're under the control of Army under Special Forces, and they go and do their specialist counterterrorism.
So 88, how old are you when you got into the diving?
So I was about 20 years old when I became a diver, and then.
And I know we've known each other for a while. We'll get into how, but you did do a stint with the SAS as well.
Correct, yes. So I became a diver in 88, and then in 89 a good friend of mine came back from the SAS. And now back in those days...
Can you tell the viewers what SAS means? I know I've got my perception, but I want to ask the experts.
So SAS just stands for Special Air Service Regiment. It's actually SASR. So... and it is the elite special forces unit of the Australian Army. So, and essentially, it's just another Army task. It just has a higher selection criteria.
Right. That's the Carter course, or Carter.
The Carter course, yeah, which is the selection course.
The intake course.
Yeah, and my one was some 30 odd days long. And it's tough.
30 days for a selection.
It's tough.
So how many guys go into a selection, and like what kind of guys get picked to go into that selection?
Well, picking isn't so much the case. You have to be sponsored if you like. So your supervisor has to say, yes, we think you're good enough to go and do this. There are certain physical...
Sponsor would be
your boss, whoever your boss was, the sergeant or the PO or whoever, whichever service you come from. Now the Special Air Service... Carter is open to all services, so right. Air Force, Navy and Army. Their idea is that we will select the people that we want to train at a base level. So we'll pick them and then we'll build them to what we want a soldier to be.
They've got a bit of a reputation of being the elite sort of special force.
Definitely, yeah. They are at the top end of our special forces. We have various. We have the Commando Unit, we have SASR, we have Incident Response Regiment, which is intelligence and again bomb disposal, chemical, biological, that sort of stuff.
Tell me a bit about the day in the life of one. I want to hear about a bomb disposal job, and I want to hear about a day in the life of a SAS or a Navy diver. All
right, so why don't we do it chronologically? So I became a gunfighter, if you like, or an operator, as we call them, in 1990, and I was part of the counterterrorism team at SASR, which is in Western Australia, as a clearance diver. So we go over, we do the selection course, we get selected, and then we do all the training to become a counter-terrorist operator. So it's about 2 years of your life just to go, yes, you can go and work there. Now that job atypically revolves around shooting and or the specialist skills. So you'll shoot 3 days a week, close quarters battle, so that'll either be on a range or in a kill house, as people know a kill house to be, a 360-degree range that you could shoot the ceilings and the walls and everything else, all live ammunition. And then 2 other days out of the week, it'll either be your specialist skill, and the specialist skill might be roping and rappelling out of helicopters, or it might be explosive entry, or it might be fast driving. Just depending on the qualifications you have, those skills would be taught on an atypical week.
Right. Yeah. So it's sort of like is it the action man dream, or what's a discipline like in the military?
Is it the action man dream? It is a lifestyle that you have to live as such. So you can't sort of go, I'm just going to go to work and then I can have.
It's not like the family man job.
No, not really, because you are committed to it. As we were explained, it's a daily renewable contract. If you're not good enough on day 3, see ya. If you're good enough for 2 months, but then you're not good enough for 2 months and 1 day, see ya.
And how does that affect you? When you go into the army, I don't even know how it works. Do you sign up for a certain stint?
So what will happen is that, especially for the Navy guys that did it back in the 90s, we had to do 1 year. So essentially we were signing up for a year of training to do 1 year, and then we would go back into rotation as a clearance diver. Now that's more to do with the Navy wanting their people back and not losing them to Army.
So you sign up for 1 year with SAS.
That's right. You sign up for 1 year, and then after that, you can go back and work in the Navy again, and then you can elect to go back.
So on that daily renewable contract, if they go, okay, John's out today, he's failed, you just send you back to
you just go back to being a clearance diver. That's right. Yeah, I mean that very rarely happened, because if you go through all that process.
In the SAS, your stint?
So my stint in the SAS in the 90s was 3 years, but then somebody decided to fly an aircraft into a building.
Right. And so we're talking about 2011 then.
So the government decided, we've got a counter-terrorism unit on the West Coast. We need to build one on the East Coast.
So that was a bit of a reaction to that whole 9/11.
Correct, yeah.
We strengthened up our anti-terrorism stance in Australia. So what was that like working through that period?
Essentially what happened was I got a call like on a Sunday afternoon and said, by the way, you're going back to SASR to do another close quarters battle course.
Right.
And I was like, hang on a minute, I'm already qualified. Why am I going back there? Which, as a person who's already trained in something, you're like, how come we need to go back? Well, this had all happened. The government said, no, we need to build this capability. You're already trained back in the 90s. We want to buff you up to the new way that we do business, and then we're going to use you as a team commander. So they had a grand plan of all the old and bolds to make them the team commander for a particular section of the East Coast CT side, and that's what happened. I went there and ended up doing 7 years in the East Coast as a counterterrorism operator.
Right. So counterterrorism training, I know there was some pretty cool stuff that you've shown me over the years. What's that sort of stuff?
It is big boys' toys. I mean, essentially, it was the same sort of stuff we did in the early 90s for when I was at SASR. The toys got better. The technology got better. You again, an atypical week is shooting and rope and blowing and driving fast cars, and then you do a major exercise and you might be jumping out of a C-130 and meeting a submarine somewhere. So it's James Bondish.
So jumping out of a C-130, what is a C-130?
Okay, so C-130 is a Hercules aircraft, which is our four-prop transport plane.
Parachuting out of that.
Parachute out of that, follow some Zodiacs down, meet up with the Zodiacs, and then Zodiac off to a submarine and RV with a submarine. So it's all very James Bondy, but at the end of the day, it's a couple of transport systems: plane, parachute, boat, submarine. Really. Yeah.
Sounds pretty cool, though.
Yeah. Look, I got to say, one of the most interesting things I ever did was at SASR was a thing called sub-swimmer release, which is where you're in and out of a submarine to be covert to go somewhere. And then when you've done the job, how do you get picked up by a submarine when it's subsurface? Oh, well, that's pretty easy. You just split yourselves in two major groups and put a rope between it and let the periscope grab you, and then you duck dive down onto the submarine. So it's pretty amazing to do that in the middle of the ocean.
Let's go through this. So you're in the water in the middle of the ocean. You've got a submarine that's under the surface trying to not be detected. And they've got the periscope up.
Yep.
And you have a rope between your two groups.
Correct. And you hang onto the rope.
So I can't imagine a massive submarine would be able to slow down too much.
So it can, without going into numbers, it can be a little bit quicker than what you can swim.
How like a periscope on a submarine?
Yes.
What's the diameter of that thing?
So at the base, it's bigger, obviously, than the surface, but at the surface, it's like the size of a flagpole.
Yeah, okay.
So that's protruding out of the water. We can see that. It's giving us a little flash with the light.
So you got to physically make sure you get yourself across the rope across?
No, it does. The submarine knows where we are because we have a certain communication system.
Is that accurate?
Yes. Oh, yes.
So you got one group, and they can pick the difference between the two
groups
enough to split it through.
To split it with the periscope.
That's pretty impressive.
It's pretty impressive for a sub commander.
So once that hooks around, so obviously you're all hanging on. Are you connected?
No.
Because if you get something goes wrong, you don't really want to be connected, right? So you're physically hanging on.
That's right. You physically hang on, and then there are other lines on the submarine. So you trail behind the submarine. You duck dive down, get on those lines, pull yourself down to the sub, and then get inboard on the sub.
So what happens? You get to the surface of the submarine, and then you got to find where you get inside the submarine. So there's obviously there's a room that becomes like a dry room, like pump it full of air.
So without being into too much detail.
Oh, okay, I like this. You can't get into too much detail.
Without getting into too much detail, you can find yourself a place on the submarine that's still in ambient water, but not in the current stream. Right. So you can get out of the current stream and you're on a diving system, but you're travelling with the sub.
So it's like eddy almost, like it's out of the current.
You're just out of the current and you're hiding away from out of the current. So the submarine can then speed up and get out of danger's way, and so then come to the surface and we can...
Oh, so you don't get into the... So like they don't sort of go into a room and pump the air out. And
modern day submarines, the ones that we have today, have got capabilities to enable what we call lock-in, lock-out, which our American and nuclear cousins have had for many, many years. But when you're talking about a small submarine, which is what our subs are, they're quite small.
So how fast did this pickup happen at?
Oh, so the pickup's not super quick, but if you let go of the rope, you're gone.
But a human swims it like flat out. You'd be lucky to swim it with. You'd be all geared up, so you'd be lucky to move. Like I know, an Olympic level swimmer might travel at 5 kilometres an hour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
or maybe maybe about that for a short stint, like with all your gear on, even with fins. So it's going to be got to be a differential in speed.
Oh, there is. Yeah, as soon as you get on, you're hanging on. Yeah.
Classic.
There's a reason. There's a physical parameter and requirement to go and work in those areas.
Yeah, right. So let's talk a little bit more. You've got some slides you brought along. I don't know the order, but I did want us to have a look at a couple of you with your military gear on. Here you go. So we'll be able to bring them up on the screen. So there will be some people that will listen to this at some point on iTunes, and they won't be able to see it, but you can see it on YouTube. So we'll be able to have a look at these images here. John, this is you. Look at you, and you look like that. What's that movie? The military movie up there?
I look like a doll. That's what I look like.
Look at you. And what is this? This is the fast rope onto aircraft carrier there. The
so
chopper?
That one there on the left-hand side, we're looking at a Seahawk helicopter with a fast rope team for what we called EBC, which is enhanced boarding capability. We went to the Gulf of Aden and we went and said, as we called them, meet and greets with the pirates.
Oh yeah.
So we would go along and say, "G'day fellas, how you going? We're coming aboard." And we would see what was on the vessels, make sure that there was nothing untoward happening.
So you'd fast rope out of a chopper onto a pirate vessel?
That's one of the options you can have. So if the sea state's too big or we want to do a very quick infiltration, then we'll use a helicopter infill. If the sea state allows, we would just then get into ribs and board via the normal ship to ship.
Yeah, right. Any interesting scenarios in that?
I mean, they're always very interesting. I mean, the sea state and the actual physicality of what you're doing is just interesting. You know, we had sea state days of sea state 3 and 4, which means anywhere up to sort of 3.5 meters of swell.
Right.
You're in a tiny little Zodiac that's only 5 meters long, and you're boarding something that's 50 meters long, and opposing swells, and now you've got these boats in close proximity.
Of some sort of resistance potential.
And we've always got to, have self protection, so we've got to be ready, postured to act.
Yeah.
Yet we, in that particular job role, we couldn't be seen to be aggressive, so you can't be charging up to a boat with guns drawn and all the movie stuff. Because again, it's reality. It's not the movies. It's more about, it's a policing action ready to be able to defend if something nasty happens.
And this shot here with all the diving gear on a big gun on the water level there.
So that's actually a PR shot because obviously it's well lit.
Yes.
We don't like that when we're actually doing it for real. And the fact that he's got his face mask on, which is something we never do on the surface.
Okay.
Yeah, but
well, that's probably a good segue because you've got some amazing like real life experiences with the military and all this stuff, and obviously you found your way at some point in your career into the movie business.
Yes.
And I want to talk a little bit about that because there's some really good stories, and you tell some funny stuff about like exactly that photo where you see you've got the goggles on, diving goggles on, a gun, and that doesn't happen in reality. I love hearing those stories about like I've been to the movies. So for the listeners, I've been to the movies with John because we've been on movies together, and he's always saying, "Oh, that guy's got his elbow up too far; it's going to get shot off." And he's always holding the gun wrong. It's like going to a dance movie with my wife. Oh, that's not proper dancing movies because he's a dancer. Or it's like when I watched Cool and Get a Gold, the surf life saving movie, and I'm being a surf life saver, and I go, "Oh, that guy's not really paddling that surf ski. Look at his technique; it's terrible." So you probably get a lot of that when you watch because every movie's got guns and cops and robbers just about.
Yep, I suppose what you got to remember is that when I went from my career in the military to the career in the movies, yes, some of the skill sets are transferable, but you've got to remember you're going from reality where worst case scenario is people die to, this is entertainment. So worst case scenario is someone gets upset and there's a tear. So there is a massive difference between the two.
So tell me, just before we get into some movie stories,
yes,
when you see one of your mates get hurt in action, real action, and I know you have, and then you see an actor having a sook about their lunch is late, how do you deal with that shit?
Well, I think you've got to, and in my world, we call it the switch. You've got to have work switch and then switch it off and then become dad, father, husband, when you go home. So you can't have work John go home, which, all the psychologists are going to go, oh my God, split personality. But you've got to do it. You've actually got to have work mode where you're professional, and, one of you guys gets hit. The first thing you're thinking about is where'd the bullet come from, or where'd the threat come from?
Right,
not actually the person who's injured.
Yeah, because you
might be screaming and yelling, and you're going, oh, good airway.
Yeah, but that's your basic.
And that's your training is deal with the problem first, and then if we can, let's get some medical aid.
If you do a first aid course, you got to work out where the danger comes from. It's the first thing you need to do.
Exactly, and it's the same for us, because potentially you're going to help someone and then become the injury yourself. You'll be another person. So, but that whole actor and especially elite actors and people who are very precious or anything else, you've just got to laugh about it. You've just got to turn around and go, okay, that's a personality type.
I just want to go back to that switching off thing, because a lot of my push with Guys Garage is to sort of help blokes get through everyday life and mental stress and all that. Do you think a lot of people find it difficult to switch off, and they carry a lot of their work, with mobile phones the way they are? Like I'm bad for it. I'm always on my emails, or I'm always checking something. You never switch off. So how do you switch off from something so full on like that?
I think that it comes down to what can you affect. So in my world, you go, it's cause and effect here. If I do this, it has this effect. If that person does that, it has this effect. Worrying about something doesn't give you an effect. It's just worry. So we try not to worry about things that we can't influence. So if I can influence something, that's great. I can mould it, and then it gets to a point where you can't influence it anymore. Don't worry about it, because the worry doesn't help you. It just causes more angst, and then your brain can't work.
Yeah, it's a source of a lot of people's anxiety.
I think people hang on to a lot of stuff, and the ability to let it wash over you is gold. It doesn't mean you have to forget it, but you need to let it wash over you and then affect the things you can affect. We call it shaping the battlefield. So if you can't shape the battlefield that way, let's try another avenue to shape it in your favour. It's the same with work. If work is overawed and you're just getting hammered every single day, then the first thing you need to do is express that. Hey, this is too much work. Can I get some help? There's some fairly basic stuff.
That's a really important point you just said there, because there's a big push for guys to start talking about stuff more. And that it's not. You're a tough guy, military guy. He rolls his eyes, but you're a you're in that environment, and you've just said when things get too overwhelming, you reach out for help. That sounds like that's something that's part of the military gold thing. Is that something you got taught, or is that something you
get into contact? You get on the radio, shoot back, get on the radio. Where's the help? Who's the QRF? Where's the quick reaction force coming to help us out?
So if we use the analogy of someone in everyday life is under fire, metaphorically.
Yep.
Okay, where's my help? Where's the help? Where's my backup?
Share the load. Yeah, you share the load, and especially today with the psychological disorders that we are creating through these very intense situations that we're putting our young people through, especially in the military. Coming back from war zones. They don't have a lot of tools, especially the younger guys don't have a lot of life tools. They haven't been to a lot of funerals, having relationship breakdowns and whatever else. So, the grumpy 45-year-old, as I was when I went to the war zone, he's already seen so much in his life. There's a bag of tools there being able to deal with the stress. But the 18-year-old doesn't have those.
I was at a surf carnival this morning. There was a couple of young kids there, and I'm thinking, it's 19 years old, and I'm thinking, guys were sent to war at this age, Vietnam and World War I and II. They never had any of that emotional maturity to deal with it. I can't imagine, and there probably wasn't that support that there is today. So that must have been unbelievable for some of those people.
Oh, back in the early 90s or mid 19, it was horrendous for those guys. Minimal amount of training. Smashed off to a war zone, and then nothing when you came home. If anything, it was like, why did you go when you came home, especially in the case of the Vietnam vets. So today it's gotten a lot better. The big issue we have today, I feel, on a personal level, is that it's very hard to have a set sequence or plan for people when they come back with psychological disorders.
Because it can go in any direction.
It can go in so many different directions. So, the baseline plan of get together, talk it through, stay with your mates, is a great plan, because you can share the load and share the experiences. And if you can keep doing that, then we can. Man,
there's no shame in that. Yeah.
No, that's right. And then that becomes normal.
Yeah,
that's how it is.
Yeah.
There used to be a bit of stigma about having some sort of psychological issue. Nowadays, we're getting a little bit smarter, society, and going, guess what?
Probably all do.
Chemical reactions in the brain. Blah blah blah. It's not a weakness. So that's great. I don't think at the moment we have the perfect solution.
No.
But it's much better.
Yeah. So for you, how do you... So you obviously transitioned well into mainstream life. You know, there's that obviously in the military you've got a bit of certainty to a certain extent with your job, at least. Probably not when you go into action, but you know, going away from that certainty into, I know the movie business is very fickle, like, you know, how do you stay focused and on the next thing? And, you know, then we'll start talking more about the specifics about some of these cool movies that you've done as well, but, like, you know, we'll start that transition into movies and the fickleness of the whole industry and what you're doing now.
Yeah. I think that the first, I'd had a 30-year career, decided that I needed something new because I had done all the jobs. I'd done just about every job that a clearance diver could do and a Special Forces clearance diver could do. So at that point in my career, I was like, what's next? You know, I met someone who was a mutual friend. He was involved in the movies. That's how I got involved, the Down and Dirty version. And then I thought, you know what? I'm going to go down this direction. I'm going to bite off as much as I can bite and chew like hell, just like I have with my military career.
Yeah.
And see where it leads me. What I didn't do was go, okay, that's my new career. I went, okay, well, that's another revenue stream, if you like, but I'm going to open up my own business. I'm going to keep this other area open. I'm going to do some reserve days and just be flexible about the way that I, you know, made my weekly earnings.
Yeah.
And I didn't get too focused about actually having to force myself down that road. I think, especially in Australia, as you know, being a stuntman yourself, it is finicky. If you get on a team and they like you, you'll stay on that team, and then there won't be a requirement for a Guy Andrews driving stuntman for the next 3 movies, which is the only 3 we get in 8 years. It's hard.
So we
work.
met in Broken Hill. I think it was our first time we met, and so we were on set for Mad Max, Fury Road, some of the pre-production stuff. And I remember, because there was a group training session, everyone was doing fitness because we had to be fit for the movie and lean.
Yes.
And I remember this group workout, and we were doing a bunch of burpees, and because I'd try to be the first guy back up to do the jump, you know, and everyone was still on the ground, and I'd look across, and there was this guy on the other side of the room, and he kept looking over it, and then I'd go down again, I'd come up, and he'd looking at me, and I'd go down, and he'd be looking at me, and he sort of, I think about the 50th one, he gave me a bit of a wink. And then we went over and introduced ourselves, and it was you, John. I met John that day, and we had a good old laugh, and we've been mates ever since. We've been training together. And
I mean, those commonalities, you know, we have similar personalities. We're obsessed with the fitness culture, and we want to be the fastest and best at what we do. And then when you see someone else like that, you're naturally drawn that way. It was a very interesting evolution because we had 60 or 70 stunt guys in the room. And of course, there's a lot of egos, a lot of alpha males, we're just doing our thing because that's what we've done for 30 years of our lives. You know, you're a professional athlete, and I'm just a crazy army guy who never said no. It was a very interesting, and it's created a great relationship, and we met some other really great people on that set as well.
Absolutely.
I remember, you know, other people had our similar aspects.
Stephen Gall and the motocross guys, great crew. So let's talk a bit about the movie. So we were in Broken Hill for Mad Max, obviously got postponed. Broken Hill became too green. They moved everything to Namibia. In the meantime, I think you went back to Sydney, I went back to the Gold Coast in Queensland, and then we wound up on the west coast of Africa and Namibia a couple of years later. And that's where we were kind of in this isolated environment where we were training every day when we weren't on set. And you were there initially as the warfare advisor, is that right?
Correct, yeah. So, I mean, we got there, I got there as being the military advisor or warfare advisor, and knowing that you guys would be there and things. So I was just thinking it was going to be an awesome experience just to be the military advisor, and my understanding of what I was supposed to do would be, you know, Charlize needs to point a gun. How do you point the gun? Tom needs to draw a pistol and fire 2 rounds. How's he going to do that? And how's he going to cock the weapon? And all those technical aspects of weapon handling and things like that. The war boys, how they're going to stand, who they're going to yell at, maybe some signals and stuff that they're going to do.
And that was essentially what you were doing.
Yeah, correct.
And then I remember the day you said, hey, they're casting for the role Ace. We've got a photo of Ace there. What's that one on? Could be on slide number. Oh, here you are here. So we'll come back to that slide later, That's actually Suicide Squad. So let's go on to try and find a little slide there with Ace. Here we go.
16.
That's the one.
So
that's you in the centre there. As Ace, the character Ace, which, tell us how that come about.
So how did that come about? I was on that war rig. As you see the photos there, those guys are on YouTube right now. That is the war rig. So we're looking forward there over the front cabin. So the war rig's
the giant fuel tanker that the Mad Max guys have got, and they're transporting fuel.
Correct. Furiosa's in charge of the war rig, and she's taking her war boys, which I'm part of. I'm the 2IC, or the second in command of the war boys on the rig. And I was up in that position there that we see in the photo right in the centre, and I was actually just instructing the war boys about a particular scene. George had come up and said, okay, we're going to bring some buzzards in, which were the enemy. They were the small cars that had all the spikes on them.
Yep,
so they were
buggies
off buggies, yes. So they speaking Russian for some reason. You have to talk to George about that. They were coming in, and George was saying, yes, they're going to come in.
George Miller, the director?
The director was saying, yes, they'll come in and they're going to do their actions, and John, your guys should do theirs. And I sort of turned around to George and said, what do you mean our guys should do ours? We'd had no script. We'd had no actual understanding of what these guys were doing. I said, George.
So did you turn around and say, George, what's my motivation?
I did not say that. No. No, that's something you would have said. I just turned around and said, what do you want? So I was being the military guy. Tell me exactly the left and right of arc. What do I need to achieve? He said, well, okay, I should be more specific, and did that. Anyway, I went through the actions with the war boys. This is the enemy, guys, you're going to do this, and all the actions over there, buzzards left, buzzards right, toe popper, big banger. They were the weapon systems that we come up with. Maybe some, gear up, which is like a military call to arms. I went through all those in my normal military voice, and George turned around and said, well, you should do that. That should be your job.
Just do that.
And I said, well, that's your decision, George. You're the director. And that's how that came about.
So that was sort of your audition as Ace, the character, was it? Or
another guy had already been earmarked for that position, and he was a stunt guy who'd obviously had acting in his resume. But George just went, oh, hang on a minute, we've got an army guy that already does all that stuff, and so why don't we just get him there? So then the auditioning process happened, and that was...
The makeup was unreal. And I remember you had because we were supposed to be affected by toxic stuff, and you had to get a big, what do they call that, goiter?
Yeah,
a stick-on goiter on the neck.
We had to have the tumours growing out of our necks and everything. Actually, the makeup was probably one of the most most uncomfortable, I suppose, out of the whole process, was the fact that my particular character, Ace, was very heavily body painted. So he had this white body paint, and then there was all the silicon tumours. I was 26, I think I had on, plus the scarifications, which are like the skull and crossbones and the spanners on the collarbones, and things.
And that took quite a while.
So the first one was 3.5 hours in the chair to get made up, and then they got it down to about 2 hours.
So I remember there was a drive because we were staying in that little town, and there was this actual scene was in a desert area to the north of town. And I remember the bus pickup was about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning for me. But you had a car because you were the military advisor, and you ended up being on the security team. And you'd pick me up at about 5, and we'd drive the 120 kilometres in about 45 minutes ish. And there wasn't a lot of rules over there. We'd pull in and we'd make up a little bit extra time on the way. But it
was an exceptionally straight road. Yes,
it was very straight road. But that was and then we'd straight in the chair, do makeup for quite a bit of time, and then out on the desert. That was interesting too. The weather's changed. I remember it being cold, bitterly cold, and then later being quite hot. And
that was quite hard. I mean, it was quite harsh. I had a lot of young guys on that truck with me. There were some quite young stunt members who weren't quite qualified, but they were allowed to be on that team because they were well harnessed in, and they needed to be that age because they wanted to show young war boys. Those guys suffered a lot because I don't think they'd ever really suffered.
Well, you told me something earlier today about there's no such thing as
cold, can't, or sharks. So there's no such thing as cold or can't.
Yeah,
can't
so they weren't getting any sympathy from you.
Not so much. No, I mean the assistant ADs, which are people who just are the assistants who run around movies and help you with every aspect of where you need to go and food and everything else. They were very, very generous and would bring jackets.
Yeah.
But yes, it was quite cold in the morning. I mean, mean, we're looking at 3 and 4 degrees in the morning, and of course the whole scene, you've got a pair of pants on and no tops. And the motorbike guys, I was part of the motorbike team as well, and even the car team, because there's no windows in a lot of the cars.
Yeah, I remember the car I was in, no windows.
It's just cold.
Yeah, you had a jacket on like this, and then they go roll camera, pull it down.
Off the jacket comes off. Yeah, so those guys quickly learned about suffering over that 3-month period.
Yeah. Have we got any other vision there on Mad Max that we can actually show, or was there?
Max.
Let's have a look.
So go.
That was a scene. This is a scene up here. Actually, this part here is a good one to watch.
That's actually a video. If you want to play the video.
This scene. So this scene, for people that can't see it, we were on top of a mountain in the Namibian desert. Max drives off and he's getting chased by a bunch of mad, marauding war boys. It's a really good clip. I take this clip whenever I'm explaining what a military advisor does, because it just shows just the massive amounts of logistics and administration. You got the team down the bottom there. But you can see in the movie, you see those ramps those guys are standing between in here, say in front of the cactus there. So that's in the scene in the movie. You see Max drive off, and the car jumps into camera shot, and that's the ramps. Yeah, that's right. And then just as he goes over that rise there, you'll see the next scene that I actually drove in, where we go down the side of that mountain, and Max gets tripped up and rolls his car about. And it's the first scene of the movie, and then you've got to try in your brain, if you're a Mad Max fan, to go, why did Max crash in a straight line? But anyway, that's movie magic. Yeah. Well, we did a rehearsal of that, and I was the guy that rolled the car was actually Guy Norris, the director, the stunt director, the head of department, and so he had a massive role, coordinating all this stuff over the movie. And this was in the pre-rehearsal, not that scene, but the practice for that scene. And he was going for the world record. He wanted to beat the one off the James Bond movie. And how many rolls was it? 13 rolls, and it was downhill, but he got 10.5, and I was one of the first cars on his left, and we had to pull up in the dust in a V formation, and we got 10.5 rolls because it dug into the sand towards the end of the rollovers. And then in the actual movie, it only rolled about 6 times. So. But yeah, that was insane. I'm like, wow, he's like, this guy's got to run the whole rest of this movie. Yeah. And he was in the first Mad Max. The guy's got a set of kahunas on him. Yes, he had a massive big motorcycle accident on the first one. That's where he clipped a car, just about tore his leg off. Yes. And he still walks with a limp today. Broke both his legs, didn't he? Oh, just a horrendous accident. But back in the day, and I do remember a lot of the stunts that we did, especially the driving type ones, which involve flips and cannons for cars to roll over. And you could probably explain what that means. But they're just being very violent, because I was on the war rig and that was all happening around me, and you could feel the percussion and you could feel the bits of fragmentation of the roads. There's a great scene on stuff. I didn't cue it up beforehand, but there's a great scene on YouTube of you on the war rig, and they've got a claw car or a actually, if you want to, pull it up, Jace. It's actually made a note. It's Fury Road behind the scenes at 1:50. There it is. Yeah, I remember that scene. It was, in actual fact, George came to me because I'm not a qualified stuntman. If you go to 1:50, and you'll see John at about 2 minutes, and he's you're on the war rig. So this scene, mate, I remember the scene. You come home, you were on the war rig. They tore the side out of the war rig. There was stuff flying everywhere. And you just said, it's just like a day at work. Well, it is, because there's a lot of action happening all around you, and there's when you see it in the movies. Well, you'll see this scene here, actually, possibly. You just think that it's... If this is the same... might not be our same video. There's George Miller. It's a different... Must be a different one behind the scenes, Mad Max Fury Road. So it's a different. This is actually a different one, Jace. Might be it's just a black and white on set. That's it there. Go up. 403. That's just after it happened. That's it. Behind the scene. I remember it. Behind the scene. Yes. So 1:50 is some good action. So to paint this scene, essentially it's the large war rig when the shovel buzzard, so it comes alongside. So these these cars here in the poles, what I worked on. Actually, I was on the base of that pole and right in the middle of that scene.
Oh, this is the opening.
Yeah, there's the opening. So that's practicing. That's one of the cars I was in on the downside, on the far side. That second car across, that's me. Yeah. All I'm doing is driving a car. So that's you up there. Oh, not now, but there's this great scene at 1 minute 50, and you'll see Johnny.
That's it,
there you're up there on top of the truck. There you are, mate. Yes, beautiful.
Now that was an interesting scene because
look at that rigging.
When
there you go.
If you look at it, that particular shot there where you
Johnny.
see the
Good.
arm of the other truck rip that off. In actual fact, it had
some of the stuff's insane. Look at
that part of the truck had wire and cabling through it.
Yeah.
And I had to remote control the arm from the other truck on. I had a little remote control unit. So I was driving that arm onto that truck. So it would connect. So it connected, but then I had to physically connect it to a steel cable which was intertwined in all of the truck.
To rip it off.
And then I gave a signal to the stunt coordinator and he remotely initiated a cannon. So there's all these things that can go wrong.
These mechanisms going on.
And there's these two trucks going side by side and then eventually that truck flips with a cannon, which is a large device underneath the truck, and it rips the carapace off. Now that carapace actually hit me in the face as it went past. It's only made out of fiberglass. So, but again, like you said, it's like a day at work. You're jumping from vehicle to vehicle and doing stuff.
When you see the raw, this is the raw footage without any
add-ons,
doctoring. It's just crazy. That scene here, that scene there,
the truck crash,
mate.
Yeah, and that's a cannon. You just see the cannon.
Yeah, Lee, the driver of that truck. He has got to be the coolest customer. Well, that's all legit. He rolled that truck. So the backstory to that, allow me to indulge.
Yeah.
So we were that was done in Penrith.
Yes.
And I was standing on the side of the road the day before while this truck came down the road and did a practice sort of swerve to get the timings, and we had some little canisters, little shots on the front of the truck to go. Yep, that went off there, and we had to delay the shooting a day because it rained. And we went back the next day. We moved down the road a little bit, and there was a bit more crown on the road. And the truck, so Lee swerved the truck, and I just, instead of looking for the canister to go off on the truck, I actually turned my head and looked. So there was 6 stunties, including myself, on the side of the road, just sort of get this timing. And I've gone, run! The trailer of the truck come off the crown of the road and actually rolled off the back of the prime mover. It was rolling at us, and so we've all just turned around and run for the hills. And the thing's wiped out, and there's some like those latex bodies on the and so the dust settles, and I see one of the boys. He's down. He's got the dummy, and he's got the latex dummy, and he's giving it CPR. It's like we nearly got killed by this semi-trailer, and they're pulling jokes. Yeah, that's just the environment that you're in.
That's right.
But then the next day, Lee's got that thing, and like for the listeners, like you're driving a semi-trailer at 110 kilometers an hour towards that wall. Takes a swerve, just unsettles the truck, and then hits a charge, which is is it a nitrous charge, or it's a charge that shoots basically a small telegraph pole out of a cannon inside the truck. It hits the ground. It's got a plate on the end of it, and it bounces back up into the cabin and hits the top of that cylinder that it's kept in.
Yeah.
And that cylinder's, the top of that's all connected to the roll cage, and the inertia, the kinetic energy, then just rolls the truck over. And you'll see in the slow mo that you'll see that pole.
You see the pole come out,
But then
shot.
to have the structure of that truck around you and rolling it like that, mate. That Lee, what was his last name, mate? There's bigger kahunas going around.
Yeah, we had a really good relationship with him because I had to be on and off the truck a lot. We had to do a lot of stuff, and he was driving sometimes from the pod. Remember the pod?
Yes, on the side of the vehicle.
And because Charlize was pretending to drive the truck, but Lee was
down
really
in
doing
a little buggy-shaped thing on the side of the vehicle.
So you try and drive a 30-ton truck to an inch of where you need to be in camera from the side where the wheels are.
Down at wheel level in a little go-kart looking thing.
They get
interestingly, for the amount of stunties that were there and people that were there was no dramas.
Yeah, I was going to say
there's no ego.
No, there wasn't.
Yeah, there was ego on that, but it wasn't really.
I think that everybody was very professional in what they needed to do and needed to be on the spot because a lot of things could have gone wrong. You had a lot of people in close proximity, a lot of dust,
and
not much visibility.
To do it right.
Yeah, so
Will, and he said he wants to come on. Richard Norton, the fight
Young
corner.
Richard, yes, indeed.
So he's done a lot of stuff with Chuck Norris. He was there. I think that's, I remember going into the gym and doing jiu-jitsu and stuff with him on the mats, and I'm not a fighter, and just you pretty quickly work out the pecking order when you do that sort of stuff.
He's been doing it a long time.
He choked me out at one point there. He goes, "Why didn't you tap?" I've gone, "I just wanted to see what it was like." You idiot. My eyes are all bloodshot. But amazing characters on that movie.
Richard's one. I love Richard to death. I really do. I worked with him on Suicide Squad, and we had a fantastic relationship on Suicide Squad. Some many funny times.
So we came back from the Mad Max. That was an amazing experience. Then we got a call up locally to do some test screening to Mad Max. So Guy Norris's team actually wanted to win the job for Suicide Squad, which is a Will Smith movie. It's a Marvel movie. I think it was Marvel.
Yes.
One of those.
Yes.
You worked on it. Anyway, we did the test screens. They won the job. You actually went to Canada and shot that with Will, and Will Smith. You did military stuff there with Will and with
Margot.
That ordinary looking bird. What's her name? Margot Robbie.
So
there's some cool slides in here of that. Let's talk about that. So
number 12, I think.
I think we were at maybe 6. I know there's often. Put here 4, 5, and 6. Let's see what's on there. Oh, this is you in there. Explain it. This is you.
So what we're looking at now is a little kill house that I made up for Will and his stunt double, because in the movies Smith. A lot of people don't realise that the stunt double has to do exactly what the main actors. So here what we're doing is just practising how he's going to move.
So he's carried his Deadshot in the movie?
Yeah, that's correct. What weapons he's going to use, how they're going to look. And of course the stunt double needs to replicate not only what he's doing, but the way in which he does it, so how he walks and how he holds his shoulders, and
this stunt double obviously would work with him in a lot of movies.
Every single thing that Will did on this particular movie, the stunt double was always there, unless the stunt double was in front of camera. So and they follow along, and they get all their little personal traits of how they hold their head and their shoulders and whatever else.
Yeah, cool. So what slide was that? That's your 13 or 14. So go back to slide 4, 5, and 6. I think I had something down there. I'm not sure if they're Mad Max stuff or
5.
That's you, 5.
5 is there.
Here you are.
Yes.
So this is you with Will, and that's some of his Deadshot stuff from Suicide, is it? Suicide Squad.
Correct. Yeah. What we're looking at here is just it's a slide on the wall I put up as military advisor. These are atypical days I have with the characters and the actors or actresses. So I've got Will Smith there on the left. He's playing Deadshot. We literally just went into the armory, which was in Canada, and I worked well with the armourers there, and we were looking at how the costume fit with his weapons, how his weapons would fit underneath his costume, because he had hand cannons and stuff like that. And then I would go to wardrobe and say, look, we need to make that coat bigger or that coat slightly smaller, or his particular weapon systems, which way he would like to hold them. Yeah. So that he felt comfortable, so he can do the acting stuff. He doesn't have to worry about the.
There was a candid little video there of you with Will.
Teaching him how to shoot. Number 10, I think it is.
Is it number 10?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is him. So tell us what happens here.
So this is Deadshot. When he first had his weapon systems, he had 7 weapon systems. So we had to go through which order he would use which weapons. So we just went through a very standard thing. And this is an afternoon just in the local area, and I'm telling him which guns are going to stop, and then he draws the next weapon. And he's got so many of them on his back and on the sides and on his wrist. And he's a human being, as you can see. He's quite funny. He's like.
What is he like?
He is a fantastic guy, actually. Very professional and does everything he needs to. But at the same time, very humanistic. Very easy to come in and talk to him one-on-one and say, how was your night, and how are you enjoying the movie, and as it is to say, I need you to do this 24/7 times, and he'd go, yep, okay, do it, and he'd do the work. So he'd do the work, very comfortable. I mean, the guy has got a lot of kudos in the industry. So and
you get certain characters like that, and I know Keanu Reeves has got a good rep. Tom Hardy and Mad Max seem to be quite a cool guy. And Margot Robbie.
Margot was fantastic. I mean, Margot actually went to the same school that my son's currently going to, so there was a connection there. And we were training with her, and you were there at the same time when we were in the Gold Coast at the pre-training for Suicide Squad. And she did a lot of weapons stuff. She didn't have a lot of weapons play in the movie, but I just wanted her to be very comfortable shooting blanks and doing her. She had a lot of bat weapons play that she had to do, so that's quite hard choreograph, to manipulate those things. So we just need to give her some dexterity.
And you see a pretty girl like that, and you think, she's just got, she's in the movies because she's knacked a bit and she's pretty. But does she apply herself?
She's switched on. She's super switched on.
So it's no accident.
Like if my men at work could grab the concepts as quickly as she did, we'd do half the training.
Yeah, right.
Like they asked, especially both of them.
So it's not an accident that these people are stars in their chosen fields because they've got the work ethic and
the ability to replicate. You could call them chameleons, really. They look at it. You don't even have to talk to them, and they go, "Yeah, I got that. Thumbs in this position, elbows in this position, stance is right, shoulders are good." They're looking at everything you do, and they can just do it.
Do you consider that sort of like, I know good athletes, natural athletes are good at doing that sort of thing. Do you think they'd be...
It's a very similar attribute. It's the ability to replicate the SME. So the subject matter expert says this is how it needs to be done. I might say hold your shoulders this way and your hands this way, but they're looking at everything. Yeah. The feet, the elbows, the head, how you're breathing. They're sucking all that information in without actually being told.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, so...
there was a scene I saw, there was a bat swinging scene with, is it Up number 7 maybe?
That's number 7? Yes, this is Margot.
With Margot, yeah.
Yeah, that's a video. So what we're looking at here is... Did
you get her to dress this way?
She comes into work like that. She's a cool kid, She comes in, "Hey, John, can we do some weapon stuff?" I said, "Absolutely, Margot, let's go and have a play." So
she's shooting blanks
She's got blanks here, and that rhino's got a particularly hard trigger pull, so it's like 6.5 pounds.
Character, which is kind of a very blasé kind of a
That's right, yeah. So what we're trying to teach her here is not only, how to handle a bat and a weapon at the same time safely, because it's still a movie set.
Very cool.
And then I put some dummies on the ground because you need to teach. She's having a problem there trying to pull the trigger. Like I said, it's quite heavy. And then she apologises. Sorry. So she's a nice lady, and then she's actually aiming off from the dummies because there's a lot of safety implications with blank rounds.
So when they actually do the real shoot, they're not aiming at the stunt person.
Never. No, they're always aiming off, and then the camera adjusts or the position so that we get a shot that looks like they're shooting people.
Two shots at each target. 2 shots.
You bought in some fake weapons, didn't you?
I do have a little fake gun, yes. And
can you show me how to...
We can play with that.
Shoot.
Where are those fake guns? I can get one if you want.
Yeah, get it. Go on, get it. So those of you guys who are watching along on YouTube, check out my Movember on... It actually is towards the end of November. I've got a little bit to go. It is creepy. But I've raised $70, John. I've raised $70 for Movember, and it's going towards... I've chosen... Movember's really cool that you can choose where you want the research to go, whether it's mental health. I chose prostate cancer because it was close to me, that cause, and it's a bit of fun. I've been waiting to do Movember because when it's got really big, so that people don't just think I just chose to grow a moustache for the hell of it. So now it's big enough, I'm going to do it every year, Movember. Look how red it is.
On you, it looks great.
Thanks.
All right.
So you've got your weapon system there, have you, John?
So I have the weapon system.
Is that what we call it?
It is a weapon system, correct. Yes, indeed. So this is atypically what I would do as a military advisor. The first question I always ask people, if they're going to handle guns, is I just get them to draw a weapon and point it at a target, because a lot can be told by just how people hold guns. So
this is a good one, because you taught me this, and I can't stand. Where's the camera?
The
cup and saucer.
Now, don't get me wrong, cup and saucer had its time and place.
Did it? What?
If it was 60s and 70s and you were a cop, cup and saucer was how you were taught how to do your revolver.
Yeah. What about gangster?
So look, the gangster is very gangster. That's going to work.
I did like that. Just on a side note, because you at work you've got like a gun sound that you do,
crack. What we say, crack. Yeah.
And then as your son was a bit younger, you used to run around the house going pew pew. And I remember you telling me this story where you had a whole bunch of military guys, and you're like, "Guys, draw your weapon, pew pew," and you went, crack.
We don't pew pew. We don't pew pew at home anymore. Yes, it's not very professional when you go to work going pew pew.
Yeah, you got to drum that out. Yeah. But go on. Tell me more about the cup and saucer, and how do you hold a handgun?
So the cup and saucer thing came into play. So the first thing we do is we get these guys to actually hold the weapon as it's supposed to be held. Yeah, I can see up there, and you can tell straight away when people don't know what they're doing, because their hand will be low.
You're going to ruin action movies for everybody.
Look, you know,
because I look for this stuff now.
This is a lot. My son knows all about this because of video games.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's a new age of people coming through that know.
Let's just do this to try and push, you know, the movie armourers and the military guys. Get you more jobs.
There you go.
And make it more legit.
And so what we do is we get them to hold it nice and high on what we call the tang. So, you know, and there's tactical reasons for that. You know, it stops the muzzle jumping around, all that sort of stuff. So that's why we do it. You know, thumbs over the top of safeties if safeties come down to be
Where's
off.
the safety? Because I always think to myself, if I was in that situation in this movie and I picked up the guy's gun, I'm going to need to know where the safety is.
So safeties typically on weapon systems are up here at the rear, and they can either be a mechanical safety like this one, and this is ambidextrous, so it's left and right-handed.
Yeah.
So, you know, you can use this hand or you can use the
thumb. And is it generically like, you know, would I go click? Oh yeah, that's off. Oh no,
no,
it's on.
and
Click.
unfortunately,
do you know?
all weapons are different.
As if I'm going to be in some sort of.
So, you know, we got a
Holocaust
1911
and
here.
need it.
There's a 1911 where you've actually got to press down on the safety, which just disengages that little lever in there, and it stops the slide from moving. Physically stops the slide and stops the actual the trigger. Yeah, couldn't remember the word then. Trigger. Yeah, military advisor. Couldn't remember the trigger. It makes it go pew pew. But on a Beretta 92F, it's the opposite. You've got to pull the safety up. Right. So you have to know the weapon system. Hence, you have to have a weapon specialist to train you this particular weapon system. So we teach him, you know, the thumbs together, thumbs forward, hands overlapping, nice and straight. You know, we'll look at people when they draw the weapon and bring it up. They start fishing, you know, or fishing like this instead of drawing it up
a rod,
like you're shooting, like you're going to punch something. So it's very much like boxing. Bringing the weapon to your eyes.
And the stance, I know, is interesting because you always say to me to stand square.
And the thing is that's also dependent on the time frame. So if you're talking about, you know, before Vietnam, Korea and places like that. So any time where we didn't have body armour, we went side on. Yeah. Smaller target.
You're teaching me in Namibia, we were lucky enough to go to a live range. We could talk about that, but like stand square on because you got the body armour. But I always worry about getting shot in the nuts.
And that's, well, you shouldn't have to worry about that.
That's
not at your height anyway.
Worry about your head.
Exactly. I mean, the technology is there and they spend a lot of money developing it, so you've got to show the technology because if you're side on, it's going to go under your armpit, through your arm, under your armpit, and there's no point.
I guess you're better off not being dead. I'd rather have no nuts and be alive than...
The thing is, that's right. You know, a shot to that region, it's not going to kill you. It will eventually, but not straight away. Yeah. Whereas a shot straight to the middle of the chest, bam, she's all over. Yeah. So, you know, we stand square on. It actually helps us with aiming and everything and transition drills from a primary to a secondary weapon.
You bring it up to your eye line.
And that's right. I mean, you'll see in movies the whole time, you know, they do this and they're cocking their head left or right because they've brought the weapon up and they're trying, I've got to look through the sights now.
And do you close one eye or?
And we don't. You can if you want to. If you're going to take a long shot, it's better to close one eye. No, but in modern day terminology, don't close your eyes because you need the
peripheral.
You need the situational awareness.
Yeah.
What's happening around me? Where are my teammates? What are they doing? Where's a potential threat?
What about etiquette? Gun handling etiquette.
I mean, the thing is that when you get on set, it's two different worlds. You go to a military place and people will not get lasered. Lasered is you got a laser coming out the front of your weapon and it never lasers Guy Andrews. So if you were there, I'd be putting the weapon over the top because I can't see your legs, so there's no point in it. Or I'd have it sideways and down. So military men are hounded about this the whole time. So if you're a weapon user, you are muzzle aware, as we call it. Yep. And even into the point when you're in a close quarters battle environment with multiple people in a room, you're still muzzle aware. You might laser.
You see that in well-trained, like well-drilled military action in a movie. You'll see the guys not crossing across each other's paths and dropping the gun.
And if they are, it's a fleeting moment of it crossing their legs, or they'll bring the weapon up at the high ready, as we call it, or high port, and go over their head.
I like looking for those little things now in the way they hold the gun.
It just shows the technical.
Yeah, and my favourite one is like you always say, oh, you got your elbow up. You know, you got a long gun and you got your elbow up. And you're going to get your elbow shot off. Got to keep that tucked in.
And they used to train that, so that's again 60s, 70s, to the early 80s. That was the trained way of doing it.
You did some stuff in some period movies, didn't you?
So we did Danger Close, which was a Vietnam, very famous battle.
Did you have to research a bit more of the older school stuff?
Well, I didn't really, because when I joined in greens. So
Right.
in 1985, we were greens and SLR.
Okay.
That's what and
Yeah.
that was, and so all of my tactics, techniques, procedures that I got taught when I first joined the military, well, it actually came from Vietnam.
Yeah, right.
So that was all the lessons learnt from the 70s
Yeah.
that went to the 80s, and
Yeah.
we hadn't had a conflict after Vietnam. So I was still in that same, 12-man patrol, SLR, no body armour, just greens, H harness webbing. So Vietnam, that movie was quite easy for me because I knew the tactics, techniques, procedures. I just had to learn what actually happened on the day.
Yeah.
And then I could make sure that people were replicating that as best as the story would allow.
Yeah. And you also worked with Mel Gibson. I remember you did that movie.
Mel,
with
I worked with Mel on Hacksaw. Hacksaw Ridge.
Hacksaw, that's right.
Yeah, which was the story of...
You've got to meet a few cool...
Oh, look, and they're all very, very different. Mel's, Mel knows what he wants and will tell you what he wants.
Yeah.
And you come up with I remember going up to Mel going, hey, Mel, there's a really good opportunity here to do a little bit of fire and manoeuvre and whatever. He goes, nah, F that stuff.
Yeah.
I want 50 guys down the, throw some smoke and go down the guts blazing. I went, okay, because he's the boss,
And that's where that line between reality and movies and you being an advisor.
You offer the advice. If they don't take it, you go, roger that. Yeah, you can't go, no, that's not the way military would do it.
What's the best military movie you've seen in terms of accuracy?
Oh, you'd have to say Black Hawk Down's pretty good.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff they do there is, they've obviously movieized it a little bit with how close people are because, again, the camera needs to see people and feel the lens. So you can't keep those big distances, what we would like to do in the military.
Yeah.
But the calls and the way people were using weapon systems, the difference between the Delta guys and the recon guys, there was obviously a lot of research done there.
Yeah.
There's some great gunplay, and the classic one is in Heat when they do the fire and manoeuvre stuff. That's probably one of the best examples of fire and manoeuvre. They're bad guys, but obviously they were well taught.
Yeah.
But most of the time, most of the military movies, and even most of the military movies that I've been involved with, it's always a compromise between what the characters need to do to develop character and what the camera needs to see.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, not unfortunately, the way it is that the population goes, oh, well, that's what it is. That's what we expect because that's what movies are giving us. So therefore, that's the norm.
Yeah.
So we're not getting judged, the military advisor is not getting judged by his peers from the military. He's getting judged by the military experts in civilian life.
Yeah, the
Does that make
civilian
sense?
military experts.
The civilian
They've watched
military
all
experts.
the
They've watched everything, so they're experts.
Yes,
And guess what? It's entertainment, so you have to, supply that.
Yeah. So what's can I hold the gun?
No.
The pretend gun. So hand up.
Yep, nice and high on the tang, and then
So do you
thumbs.
actually
Now,
don't hold the trigger?
You see that a lot in movies.
Do I
when
hold it like this in a V shape?
people? Oh, that's terrible.
Well,
That's how you hold
I'm
it.
trying to.
That's
Hang on, I'm
great.
trying to get on camera. Do I look like someone had another 48
So
hours?
thumbs like this.
No, look at that. Oh, this is good.
Thumbs like this.
Like that.
Yep.
Like that.
Thumb. Yeah, there you go. Now your
Hang on, where's the
right
camera?
thumb on top of the safety. Right thumb.
Right thumb.
Yeah, right thumb. That's
Top of
that.
the safety. On this safety?
Yeah, on that safety, and now your left thumb meets your right thumb.
Okay.
Ah, there you go. So
Not
now
as
you've got maximum
It's not
skin.
as easy as it looks.
There you got maximum skin on the weapon, so you can control what
Hang
the
on,
weapon
ready?
does.
Down.
Yeah.
Pew pew.
Pew pew.
Is it
Okay,
crack, crack,
I will
crack,
make
crack?
sure that you are on the next list for
I look
military
like
experts.
I should be on. What's that? What's that stupid comedy movie? Naked Gun.
Naked Gun. With that mustache.
That's cool. So yeah, that's not as easy as it looks. So the old cup and saucer, that's not going to happen because I see those bad YouTube videos of those girls going, "Hey, look at me," smacking themselves in the head.
Yep.
They're hilarious. I love those.
The other major thing that movies are now concentrating on, and you've got to look at things like John Wick and all that sort of stuff, is the gunplay. That's a major part of the movie.
He does some serious training though.
He does some
Keanu
serious
Reeves
training, and he does training with some of the best weapon experts.
John Wick, Keanu Reeves. Or what's the other one with Tom Cruise? It's another one where he does a lot of shooting as well.
Yeah, is that Reacher, is it? Or
Jack Reacher. Dry Reacher.
Yeah. So, those guys, and let's be brutally honest, it's not brain surgery.
Yeah.
It's getting your hands on the tool, as we call it this year, and just practice.
What's your, okay, let's get a bit, so what's your theory, on guns and owning guns and Americans owning guns and that whole argument?
I don't have a gun,
walkabout license.
fetish and I've got to have 10, 15 different weapon systems. I've come from a workplace. It's like saying to a carpenter, "Oh, what's your favourite screwdriver?"
Yeah.
And he goes, "I don't have any favourite
So,
ones."
but you being familiar with weapons and stuff like that, do you think guns get in the hands of the wrong people?
I think we've got the right rules. Don't get me
Australia,
wrong. I think we've got the right rules. You can't compare apples to apples with America and Australia. You know, you get 270 million people and 20-something million people, so you just can't do it. If there are less guns in the hands of people in the streets, there's less gun crime / injuries.
Yep.
Hello, it's baseline.
Yep.
And then there's less of that issue that the police have to focus.
You're telling me it's
on.
very, very difficult to get a gun license and own a gun.
So is it difficult? It's not difficult. It's procedural. You have to do this step, then you have to do this step.
And they've got to be stored
safety,
in
and they have to be stored in a safe position. The police have to vet you and say, is that person sane enough to own that handgun?
Yeah.
You have to then prove that you use that handgun in competition, because the only way you can use a handgun is if you're doing it for competition.
Right, yeah.
You have to have a purpose.
Yeah.
You can't just go, geez, I'd really like a Desert Eagle 45. I'll
carry
keep
that
one of
around.
those at home. Ideal for home defence.
Yeah.
No, you can't do that. So, whereas in America, you can rock into a store and go, I want the biggest, baddest gun, and they go, well, that's a 12-day holding period. You hand your money over in 12 days' time, you give the gun. You know, they sell a lot of guns that way. You go to Walmart and pick up a semi-automatic
It's unbelievable.
weapon.
Yeah.
So,
mate, that's awesome. Is there any slides we missed that you want to show before we go? Well, we've been talking just over an hour. It goes fast, eh?
it does go fast.
But I mean, that's been fantastic. So it's such an interesting career. Where to now? Do you think? Like, is there any movie stuff on the horizon, or just wait for the next thing?
There's always movie stuff on the horizon. I just got back from Mad Max Con in Japan, which was
like a Comic-Con,
a Comic-Con type, and absolutely amazing people. The Japanese Mad Max fans are the biggest fan base in the world,
isn't it?
Oh, unbelievable! They will get dressed up and they will pour their hearts out. I had a young lady who shook my hand and literally was melting in front of me because she was looking at Ace, and I'm looking at her going, that was an accident.
You should see me with my goiter on.
I was like, she was beside herself, and so the fan base is fantastic, and they get right into that warrior ethos. I mean, there are amazing things that come off those movies.
Yeah.
There are other things on the horizon. Mel Gibson talked to me the other day about a Destroyer movie that he wants to do. Again, like the movie industry is, we're going to do this, and then the money gets pulled, or somebody goes, no, I need that director to go do something else. So it's a bit finicky for us here in Australia.
Yeah. Hey, there's a slide. Let's quickly show slide 6.
Oh,
and
yes.
It's you developed this, and those are the bad guys in Suicide Squad.
So,
the sewer scene or something.
Yeah, this was the sewer scene, and these are our bad guys in Suicide Squad. And if you've seen the movie, essentially they are normal human beings who get turned into these monsters with all these eyeballs. So that suit you're looking at me there putting on, if you can see the footage on the left-hand side, is I've basically got a little pony bottle there, which is like a spare air for a scuba diver, and the hose is going up the back over the top of my head, and then I've got a regulator, a very slim profile regulator, which we had to develop and build so that it fit in the mask.
So to breathe.
Yeah, second stage regulator, which enables you to breathe. And then the actual mask itself, I had to go to wardrobe and say, hey, look, if we have a problem, we can't get this thing off.
Yeah, right.
So they developed the mask with a little grab section, which was a small section around the mouth, which just enabled it to pull off, and it had magnets on it. So it could quickly go on and off.
Because you were going to be submerged in this.
Well, the whole thing's rubber, so we had to wear lots of weight.
Yeah, right.
So we're
floating
underwater with lots of rubber on, so we had to wear lots of weight, which was in the H harness.
Yeah.
And then we're being pulled underwater to a fight scene. So the whole idea was that we'd hold our breath, get pulled underwater by rigging. So now we're speeding underwater, hit the seals at pace and knock the seals over. So you look like you're super swimming. Yeah. We'd have a fight scene, and the whole idea of the air was that we could breathe while we're doing the fight scene.
Right.
Because once we got to
how long a time?
That had about 2 minutes where we were.
Not much.
So you'd hold your breath because we didn't want the bubbles. So you're on camera, you don't need the bubbles, but then when you're fighting, you can have bubbles because you're now fighting someone on scuba air.
Of course,
so no one can tell where the scuba air is coming from. So we had to sort of develop it and go, how's this all going to work?
So you're diving. career would have helped with this whole...
Yeah, well, look, I went through the whole design process with a couple of guys from a local scuba shop that were helping us out. I also obviously had to go see wardrobe and develop that, and then talk to the stunt people, and we actually had to do breath hold training, which again is another story about Margot Robbie in a Lamborghini underwater and breath hold.
Right.
Maybe we'll do that next time.
Or?
That was Suicide Squad.
I like the sound of holding breath with Margot Robbie.
And she was fantastic. She could end up holding her breath for 5 minutes. She was a real trooper.
Oh, okay. Where do you look?
Yeah.
The cameras.
But yeah, we're very interested. I mean, and I love this sort of stuff because it brings in all those skill sets that you get over the years. And I basically ran that project by myself, and the stunt director said, "Yeah, run with it, John. Do that. Make that happen for me." So yeah.
Oh, awesome, mate. I think we could talk forever.
Yes,
and
probably.
we do when we go mountain biking and doing various things. Mate, that's been awesome. Thanks for coming in.
Right, you're welcome.
Great yarn. We'll talk again. We'll get a few more in over the next few months. We're going to do a podcast. Try and do one a month.
Yep.
To start with, try and ramp it up a little bit more if we can. But mate, we've got tons of mates that we can have great stories.
Oh, we need to bring them in. Yes.
But by the time I get around to seeing you again, you'll probably have done another movie. So
let's hope so.
Yeah, that'd be lovely. All right, thanks, John.
You're welcome, Guy. Thank you very much.